Hey folks, this is Docs from 2 days before this episode is going to go up. We originally recorded this a month before it was going to go up, and between now and then some stuff has come up that's going to change our plans. We are still going to run this episode because there's stuff that we want to talk about in it, and also I still want to do the project I talk about at the end. But next week what we're going to do is talk about what happened, and then after that, we will be going back to regular scheduling. Stuff happens and plans have to change sometimes. Anyway, here's what we originally recorded. Hey folks, welcome to Buddhish episode 20. We're going to be talking about the schedule of the show for the next few months. Nick is getting up to something that is going to make it very difficult for us to record normally. Before we go any further, Nick, why don't you tell us about what you're up to?
On March 25th, I will be leaving the US to go to Japan, and on March 28th, once I've arrived, I will begin my Shikoku pilgrimage on foot. As we've discussed on the show before, this is a 750-mile circuit that circumnavigates the entire island of Shikoku in the southern region of Japan, and it visits 88 Buddhist temples that were either founded by Kukai Kobodaishi or were significant to him in his life in some fashion. I'll be doing this entire pilgrimage on foot, and so I will be away for a total of around 50 to 55 days, depending on how much I can walk each day. For anybody who's interested in learning more about the pilgrimage and how I'm approaching it, I'll just include a brief description of my plans and my approach and what I'm bringing and how I'm going to go about it. So, I'm planning on packing very lightly. When you walk this pilgrimage, you typically stay in a different place every night. And everything you want to have with you, you have to carry with you. That means that it pays dividends to not burden yourself with unnecessary stuff. I'll be bringing changes of clothes, a first aid kit, some waterproof layers and protections. Also, I'll be bringing some medications and some basic technology like my phone charger, a mobile battery to charge my phone if I can't plug it in, and things like that. But beyond that, I'm not really bringing much else. This will make it so that what I'm carrying on my back will be light, and it'll also make it so that I have room to accumulate stuff if I end up getting souvenirs or gifts from people I meet along the way. Speaking to staying somewhere different every night, I want to mention that there are typically 4 options for where to stay each night. The first and most obvious one is hotels. This pilgrimage route goes through many towns and cities on the island of Shikoku. It's not like most of the trip is walking in the backwoods where there's no civilization or no technology or anything like that. I'll actually be able to use hotels, which will be equipped with Wi-Fi, laundry, and food and the basic necessities. The second option is traditional Japanese inns, known in Japanese as ryokan. These are smaller bed and breakfast style inns that are usually owned by a family or a couple of individuals, and these will be smaller and have fewer rooms, but they'll still have private rooms like the hotels will, and they'll also be equipped with laundry or with Wi-Fi, and typically they'll also offer a package that feeds you dinner and breakfast so that you eat when you arrive and when you leave. And then the third option is going to be shukubo, or staying at a temple. Many temples offer, for a small fee, a place to stay overnight with other pilgrims that usually also feeds you a vegan meal for no extra cost on top of reserving a place to sleep. The fourth option will be minshuku, which translates to a place for the people to sleep, or a lodging for people. And this will typically be a non-private room setting where you'll share a place to sleep with 2 to 4 other pilgrims. And these places will be equipped as well with Wi-Fi and laundry sometimes, but they'll typically be smaller and cheaper than the other 3 options. When I've been planning out where I'm going to stay, I've been using a wonderful website called henro.org. It has an interactive Shikoku pilgrimage map that contains all of the 88 temples, all of the bekkaku, or the 20 additional special locations that are part of the pilgrimage, and it also includes all the various types of lodgings and places to stay all along the pilgrimage route. You can filter according to what types you want to stay at, such as shukubo, minshuku, or ryokan, or hotel, and it also gives you the name and the contact information of all of these places, and it shows you where that place is in relation to the pilgrimage route itself. So I've gone through that map through the entire pilgrimage route, and I have calculated how much I'm going to walk each day and where that will put me on the route, and what sleeping locations are close by to where I will arrive. And so I've planned out everywhere that I intend to stay. But what's very important to remember is that I have not actually made reservations at these places yet. I've only reserved the first 3 or 4 places that I'm going to stay at this stage. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that I actually make pace and that I actually arrive at those places when I think I'm going to arrive. If for some reason I get sick or injured, or I don't walk enough in one day, I don't want to have to cancel on somebody. It's very impolite in Japanese culture to cancel, especially with less than a 48-hour notice, because that's a pretty big financial hit for the owner of the ryokan, the minshuku, or the hotel in question. So you want to make sure that you reserve places that you're pretty confident you're going to go to. And so that being the case, I'm trying to keep maximum a 3 or 4 day lead time on my reservations. So each morning when I get up to walk, one of the first things I will do is I will call and make a reservation for where I think I'm going to be 3 days ahead or 4 days ahead. Now, one thing that will throw a wrench into this entire system is holidays. This year, April 29th through May 5th, which is going to be fairly late in my pilgrimage, is Golden Week. Golden Week is one of the biggest travel holidays in Japanese culture, and so tons and tons of places will be booked out entirely and won't have any vacancy. So as a result, I'm going to have to try to reserve those places much more ahead of time than I normally would. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that I actually get a place to stay. You don't want to show up on the same day and try to get a reservation or a vacant room to sleep in during a big holiday like that. It would be like trying to get a reservation during Thanksgiving in America. They simply won't have any vacancy for you, no matter where you go, because everybody has traveled into town or out of town, and so there's going to be no rooms. In that case, I'll probably try to reserve a couple of weeks ahead, and if I don't make it in time, I'll try to figure something else out. But that is going to throw a wrench in my reservation plans. On average, I've calculated that I will be walking about 15.5 miles a day. At a pace of 3 miles an hour, or thereabouts, that's going to be 5 to 6 hours of pure walking. On days where I have 18 or 19 miles, it will be 6 or 6.5 hours of pure walking. And on days where I have 10 miles even, it will be 3 hours of pure walking. However, the incline or the elevation gain and loss will change throughout the trip, and that will change my pace. Nevertheless, I've calculated an average of about 15 miles. This is something that's pretty hard to train for. Marathon runners train for marathons by running more than 26.2 miles. However, you can't really walk more than 750 miles as a means of training for walking 750 miles. So what I've done is I have tried to make sure that my cardiovascular health is as good as I can get it in the amount of time that I've been training and planning for this trip, which has been about 6 to 8 months, maybe closer to a year, and then just going for it. I have set up my schedule such that there will be a slow ramp upward in terms of how much I walk each day, and luckily the first portion of the trip is relatively flat and even and paved, and so I expect that that ramp up will help me considerably as my body adjusts to the strain of walking that much every day. The first day will be 10 miles, the next day will be 11 miles, the third day will be 12, and then it'll just increase in varying increments from there into being roughly, as I said, 15 miles a day. At the end of the trip, it's pretty traditional for people to go to Mount Koya, or Koyasan, in Wakayama. This is about a 2-hour train ride from the end of the pilgrimage to the mainland of Honshu. And the reason that people do it is because Koyasan, as we've discussed on the show, is the headquarters or the center of Shingon Buddhism, which was founded by Kukai or Kobodaishi, who the pilgrimage is all about. So at the end of the trip, in May sometime, I'm going to spend my last day in Japan at Koyasan before I make it back to Tokyo to fly back to Seattle. I have lots of plans for how I'm going to document and record this trip. One of my primary plans is to write a travel log in English and in Japanese and keep track of everything that I do each day while I'm gone. And then when I return, I'm going to attach an introduction introducing the pilgrimage and why I'm going on it and things like that. And then I'm also going to attach a conclusion where I talk about how I've changed, do some reflecting on the trip, and talk about what I learned and experienced and how I'm different for having taken the trip. And I'm going to type this up in English and in Japanese so that it can be circulated online and also to my local Buddhist temple, which has many Japanese members, but also so it can be circulated online for people who listen to this show or for anybody else who might be interested. This will be the longest walk that I have ever done in my life, and my plan is to travel light. So because I'm going on this trip, I will not be able to record Bright on Buddhism episodes every week or every 2 weeks like we typically do now. That being the case, there may be some Fridays in April and May where we don't actually upload anything. Up till this point, we've been on for 3 years, and we have not missed a single Friday upload, and we're very proud of that. However, as we've said before, we think that this is a pretty good reason to miss some uploads. And don't worry, I'll come back, and we will continue making interesting, informative content about Buddhism for you on the show like normal. To cover this gap, we've discussed a couple of different ideas. One idea, which may or may not materialize, has been that as I walk, I will make weekly voice memos on my iPhone where I simply talk into it, unedited, unscripted, and I'll send this file to Docs, who will then hopefully be able to edit it if need be, or to just directly post it to our podcast feed. This will be an update where I talk about experiences that I've had, things that I've done, and people I've met, and places I've been. I'll have, no doubt, tons of interesting and fun experiences visiting Buddhist temples all over Shikoku because the thing in Japanese Buddhism that I am most interested by personally and professionally is the architecture and spatiality of Japanese sacred spaces. So, visiting these places is going to give me a lot to think about, a lot to see, a lot to talk about, and I predict that I will have a lot to report if this idea comes to pass. Docs, you also had some ideas for how to cover this gap. Would you like to talk about those now?
So, first of all, hopefully I will be able to take the audio from Nick's recordings on the road and make something out of them to post up. However, recording outside on an iPhone is not ideal, so I make no promises that the audio will actually be usable. On my own end, I am going to try to get a few guests to talk on the show about things outside of Buddhism. For one, I'm considering talking to local religious figures to talk about some more American religions on this show for a bit. This is a plan that, as recording, is just barely getting started, so I make no promises that this will actually come to pass, but my hope is to get some people who want to talk about religions other than Buddhism for a bit. I also might just get some friends of mine who I think would make for interesting conversations and try to record something with them, kind of undirected. We'll see. Astute listeners will note that the date Nick said he was going to fly out has already passed. This is because we work with a backlog on this show. That's part of how we've been able to maintain our combo. So, between when I am recording this and when you are hearing it, I will either succeed or fail at this plan. Neither of these things are guaranteed to happen, and so if it doesn't work out, then we're going to be going on hiatus until Nick gets back. Like he said earlier, this is a good reason to drop that combo, and we can just pick it right back up when he gets back. So, that's it for now. Hopefully next week there will be something new up for you to listen to, but we make no promises. Who knows what's about to happen?
Thanks for tuning in to our final episode of Buddhish before I go on my trip. Remember, I fully intend to return to Seattle and continue to make interesting and informative content for you about Buddhism on this show. After I get back, we have every intention to return to our weekly Friday upload schedule. Every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, you'll be able to find a new episode of Bright on Buddhism wherever you find your podcasts. Next time you hear from me, I'll either be in Shikoku doing my pilgrimage, or I will have just gotten back. And so, until then, farewell. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.